Hello, everyone, and welcome to Social with a Side of Justice, a multi-episode series where we talk about various topics centered around the importance of social justice.
This season, we are focusing on women empowerment and leadership, exploring how women are breaking through barriers and creating change in every field.
We'll also be diving into the challenges women have historically faced and continue to face today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Social with a Side of Justice. I'm Maria Luisa.
And I'm Maria Eduarda, and we will be your hosts today.
On today's episode, we will be joined by Dr. Jacquelyn Bobien-Blanton.
Dr. Bobien-Blanton has nearly 30 years of experience in education and is currently the Executive Director of Early Learning for Orange Township Public Schools.
She's the author of It Takes a Village to Raise a Reader, a vital and essential resource to unlock a student's success, and has been recognized as an exemplary elementary educator.
Dr. Bobien-Blanton has also helped shape early childhood education standards in New Jersey.
Thank you for being with us
Thank you
today.
for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
We were lucky enough to get to chat with you on Friday. We found it really interesting that despite being in education for 30 years, teaching wasn't your original goal.
Your book is called It Takes a Village to Raise a Reader. Can you explain what the village refers to and why it's so important for student success?
Yes, so that's a great question. The village refers to not only the families, but the educators, the health, the profession, the criminal justice, the anything that surrounds a child, that whole ecosystem that surrounds the child. That's the essential the village. It's the community. It's those people that are in the community, because we know that it just can't be educators that raise readers. It's the village, and it's anyone that surrounds that child.
What do you believe is a common mistake made when trying to encourage young students to read?
One of the biggest problems that we have is we have families, and again, not everybody are educators, but one of the things that we see time and time again is the fact that we skip skills. So families believe that they know in order for children to read, they've got to teach the letter names, right? And so when they get the letter names, they forget everything else. And that's just a drop in a bucket. So they miss skills. They miss a lot of skills, and they develop bad habits. And so by the time they get to preschool or kindergarten, you have to undo those bad habits and then move forward. So I just need parents to understand that reading is just not reciting letter names. In fact, learning the letter names does not build a proficient reader. It's the sounds. You don't read the letters when you're reading. You put sounds together, right? So, and I know they want to get flashcards and help the children memorize words on a flashcard. That doesn't do anything, because memory is on the right side of the brain, and we read with the left side of the brain. So we're building muscles that are not really directed toward reading. So those are some of the things that we see time and time again.
And have there been specific studies that you have seen that have demonstrated all of this?
Yeah, so there's over 50 years of study to help us realize and understand the pillars or the essential skills that are needed for reading, as well as how to teach it. So if that body of knowledge is the science of reading. You might hear it referred to other terms like research-based reading, but it's really the science of reading, because reading is a science, and the star of reading is the brain. So there's 50 years of study to help us understand how to build a proficient reader. So over those 50 years, we've learned through disciplines coming together, education, neuroscience, psychology, all working together to help us understand how to turn a regular brain into a reading brain. And so we learned that we need phonological awareness, that we need phonics, that we need vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. And we needed to be done systematically, and we needed to be done, um, it needs to be done explicitly. So those are the things that we've learned through the science.
So my nephew I think he struggles a lot in school right now. So would there be like any tips that you would recommend, especially for like people like with children who are having like a much harder time like learning how to just like learning in general, because it could be like just a simple thing. Sometimes he'll forget, but like he'll know like what he like. It's like what you said, like the memorization part of it. But when it comes to actually doing his homework, like he'll like not be able to do it by himself, or like sometimes he won't even know and he just struggles. So are there like any tips that you would recommend?
What's the age?
He is, I think, 5.
5. Yeah. So that's a great question. We are seeing a lot of children struggle, just like you, with the behaviors and memory, just like you described. And it's not all because of COVID, but we've lost a set of skills that are very key to learning, and that's executive function skills. It's almost like the air traffic control of everything you do is the controlling center of your brain. And it allows for processing. It allows for self-regulation. It helps with your memory. And you have to teach those things, right? You have to build them over time. And so in cases like this, we say to families, and it sounds very simple, but it's powerful. We've got to play games with our children. They're memory games. The games that like I used to play, like Old Maid, but like you would play today, Uno, Simon, any of those games that allow them to wait, take a turn, wait for someone else, and then think about what they have to do or remember the card that was played. Those types of skills, although it seems minor, they're major, because executive functioning skills, that's what you need in order to learn. You need those skills. We call them soft skills, but they're not. They're skills that if you sometimes you call a child and you call their name and they don't answer you right away, right? You think they're being fresh, or you think they're not listening or paying attention, they're being disrespectful. But we're finding that it's not that. They have to process what you said, and then they've got to process, now what is it that I need my body to do? And so those are executive functioning skills, right? They've got to listen, they've got to process, and then they have to do. So we have to chunk. We can't tell a child who we think is having issues, we can't give them 5 or 6 directions. You say, Jackie, I need you to stand up. Jackie, I need you to go to your locker. Jackie, I need you to do da-da-da-da-da. You can't give it to that child all at one time because they can't process it. It's too much, and they only hear the last thing, right? And so we get frustrated with them, but we're not understanding that a lot of times it's because they don't have the skill set to be able to carry it all out. So I would say, let's look and see if there are executive functioning issues. 9 times out of 10 it is. Then we build those executive functioning skills. There are a lot of things that you can do to build them. And then we have to assess children. We have to see where they are, right? Because if we don't, then we run the risk of repeating something that they already know. And when we do that, we get behavior issues. So we've got to meet them where they are and then take them where we need them to go. But always meet them where they are, and that's through assessment, understanding what they can do and then what they need to do.
It was actually really funny because before this we were just talking about like midterms and how like the pandemic has affected like just like the education like program so much, because now we're like struggling with like midterms and all that stuff. And when you were also talking about like the situation with like kids like now after the pandemic, a lot of like kids, especially my nephew's age, like they're really like, based on technology. Like a lot of our like work is now on technology. Like for example, my AP test that I'm taking in May, they're all going to be on technology, but last year they were all on paper. So do you also think that technology plays like a really big important part like in the development aspect of things?
Absolutely, great question. You guys are on fire with these questions. Yes, technology is a good thing, right? It's here to stay, and we just need to learn to coexist. But for children that young, for children 3 years old and under, we still want to minimize screen time because they need to interact, they need to talk, they need to sing, they need to play, they need to interact with adults, right? Between 3 and 5, we can start to introduce some of the screen time to them. But again, we have to monitor it. And it needs to be with an adult, right? It can't be a babysitter because the brain from 0 to 5 is susceptible the most to outside influences, to the environment, right? And so we want to make sure that we are cultivating an environment where the brain is growing, and we want to put good things in the brain, right? And so the screen does not allow for one major thing, and that's the back and forth, the serve and return that they need at this age. And all of that is like a tennis match. You know, the child offers up an opportunity to have a conversation with an adult or someone else, and then you in turn, you meet that and you respond to that child's offer, and you go back and forth. That's how we build language. When you're on a screen, you don't want to, that does not afford you the opportunity to do that. Not so much with young children. And so they miss an opportunity to grow the brain. That is what we're trying to do at this age, from 0 to 3 and from 3 to 5. We're trying to grow the brain, and the screen limits that. It limits that. There's a place and a time for it, but at this point in juncture, we need more interactions with adults and with the environment as opposed to the screen. Now, you can bring the screen in, and again, building reading skills requires background knowledge, right? So you can use the screen time to, if you can't get to an aquarium or it's not near you, to bring up YouTube videos or any type of programs that will allow your child to experience some of those larger animals that live in the water. And then you can talk to them about it, but you can't leave them by themselves because they don't know. They need that exchange, that back and forth to build the proper brain cells.
Do you think that behavioral issues that come from technology begins to be more difficult to reverse when they're older?
Yes, the brain, again, with young children, what happens when they're young matters because it carries through, right? And so when you try to replace the human connection with the screen, you don't build those social and emotional skills that's needed as children get older. We see it all the time. You can sit at a table, a dinner table, and everyone is on their phone. There's no one talking. So you don't know how to enter into play. You don't know social facial cues. You don't pick those things up. And so as you get older and you try to enter into a situation or an event or an activity with another individual, if you don't have those skills, it will be awkward. It will be awkward for not only you, but for the other person. I'm like, wait, hey, what's going on? And then, you know, it could be devastating to you if you don't receive I guess, an invitation to enter into that situation. That can be devastating. That can play on your self-esteem and your self-worth. And so, and then when you get to that point, when adults try to, I guess, instill those social and emotional cues, it's hard. The older you get, the harder some things get because you're past that window of opportunity that we talked about earlier when the brain is the most susceptible to environmental influences. So once you get older, it's harder to learn. It's harder to break those habits, or it's harder to teach new habits the older you get. So we try to make sure that we instill those type of skills early on so you can carry them with you.
And that all connects because, like, My sister mentioned our nephew earlier. He got a Nintendo for Christmas and he's like 5. So he's been learning how to use it, but like lately like his dad has been saying how like, he doesn't like, speaking to people. It seems like he's a little less social than he used to be, more scared to like talk to people who may be older, just kids his age as well. So,
Yeah.
it all connects.
Yeah, it does. It does. We're taking away vital experiences for young children when we don't offer them the ability to interact with others. They don't learn that these are skills that need to be taught and practiced. And so it's easy to hide behind the screen and you don't know the other person. That's easy. Taking them away from that screen because it's addictive. It can be addictive. There's studies out there to say that screen time, whether it's the social media platforms or whether it's the Nintendos and the game, whatever those games are, it can be addictive. And what it's doing is it's freezing some of your capabilities as far as the brain is concerned. I remember when I was young. I don't know if your parents ever said to you when you're watching too much television, they'll say, you're killing your brain cells off. And essentially, they were right. You're not tapping into the brain, and you're not getting as much out of it as you possibly can when you're fixed on a screen. So it's not even good for older children, even adults. And I know you're saying, well, our brain is pretty much set. No, it can be addictive. And then you're not going to learn how to interact with others. You're not going to learn those cues. You're not going to learn how to interact with others when you get into the social and when you get into the work field or even into college. It's very awkward.
And you emphasize the role of parents, teachers, and the community in a child's education. How can high school students contribute to this village to support young readers?
Right, it's a good question. So you're part of the village. If you have younger siblings, if you know or you're interacting, whether it's through your faith-based organizations or youth organizations, you have a responsibility because they want to they look up to you. They want to be like you, good, bad, or indifferent. They want to be like you. And so modeling reading. Then you also want to read out loud to young children so they understand fluency. And this is how good reading sounds. I pause at the end. I read with intonation. I read with fluency. I read, with dependent upon the type of sentence. I either am excited or I'm not. But you're modeling reading, but not just reading, because not everybody likes to read with young children. But you want to take them to the park and you want to talk to them. You want all these beautiful trees around here. What type of trees are there? I don't know. Let's research it. Talking about the leaves, go to the park, the zoo, the aquarium. You want to build background knowledge and you want to build vocabulary. So whenever you're interacting with children, be mindful of the fact that you are building language and you're building vocabulary. And it doesn't have to be sit down, let's all, do this. No, it's fun. It's fun. It's playing games with them. Nursery rhymes, reading nursery rhymes. You're walking along and you're asking them to clap out the syllables in their name, or you create a nursery rhyme together. The old Jackie, Bobaggy, Banana, Fana, Bobaggy. You just come up with just games like that. It's fun to them, but also reading and telling stories. Create stories. You start off the story. One day there was and then you go to the person that you're mentoring or your brother or sister, and then they started and someone else started. Then you say, let's write that story out, because what you're saying is what's said can be written, and what's written can be read. That's easy stuff. Telling stories is powerful. Our ancestors told stories because they couldn't read, right? So they told stories, and you hold them close to you. And that's what we want for children. Tell stories, simple stories, crazy stories. It doesn't have to be right, wrong, just stories, to get the language, the vocabulary, and the experience.
You were like, I think that it's just genuinely like the way like we grew up. We grew up differently than the way our nephew grew up. Like we grew up reading like books, like Dork Diaries. Like we were always like, and when we were to watch like shows, it would be harder because we would have to use CDs. Like that's how like we may be young, but we still had to use some of that stuff. And like you were talking about like creating stories, like stuff that we would do like by ourselves sometimes, like because we had to learn English by ourselves because our mom and dad didn't speak English. Like we would get like those like Mad Libs or Mad Libs book, and then you would create like your own like words, and then it would be like this crazy story, and it's just like so different. But like now that like we're having this conversation, I want to incorporate it more in like my nephew's life because genuinely like I see the difference between me and him. I enjoy reading and he doesn't even enjoy doing like anything school related. And not everyone's going to love school. That's an obvious thing, but like just like being aware that you're going to school, so you have to take everything that you're gaining from school and like put it to something because his Nintendo isn't going to give him his future. It's his education, and we always stress that, and that's like the biggest thing that my parents instilled in us. Like education is super important. So like it's just like the correlations that we have, and it's just like yeah.
It is really sad too because, you know, the modern era technology is robbing our kids from so much, you know, of human connectedness, right? And it's sad because there's so many things that we can do. We have children that don't even like to go outside. First of all, they don't think it's safe. Right? So we just have to get back into making sure that learning is fun. It doesn't have to be, let's sit down, it's time to learn, and it's all becomes serious. I wouldn't want that either. But if you do some of the things that I just said, it's fun. I mean, who wouldn't want to create a story and tell that story in front of their family, in front of their friends, or their stuffed animals? But we got to make sure that it's purposeful and it's meaningful, right? That's how we learn things. So if you're going to the grocery store, you're going to Target or wherever you're going nowadays, have them write out a list, right? And if they can't write, use the circulars that come into the mail or online, and let them clip it out and make the first letter. They have their list. Check off their list. When they go to the zoo, get some animals, pictures of the animals, and then have them check off those animals as they see them. Learning can be fun, and it's our responsibility and our jobs to make sure that learning is fun. Because at 5, they should not like school. It should be the fun. It should be the best place to go because you're going to see your friends, you're going to interact with them, and oh, by the way, we're learning as well. So learning, if they're thinking that learning is, this is what we're doing and we have to learn, it's not going to be fun. But if they're doing things and they're having fun, but you know that they're learning, that's the best type of learning for them, you know.
In your book, you talk about unlocking a student's potential. What do you think is the biggest barrier to a student reaching their full potential in reading?
So I think that it's the adults around them. So one of the things that I talk about all the time is when we leave children back, whether it's first grade, second grade, third grade, it is not because of them, right? They didn't get themselves there. It's the whole village that essentially got them there. And so children look at it as a punishment. We say, no, 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 we want to help, but they look at it as a punishment because everybody around them, they're still doing what they're doing, but I'm being left back. I can't move on with my friends because you say that I don't have the skills. Well, if they could speak in the way I'm speaking, they would have to ask everybody around them, what did you do to help me? How did I get to this place in a short period of time where I can't read? What did you do from 0 to 5? Did you build my vocabulary? Did you build my language capacity? Did you read to me? Did you provide me with experiences outside of our home so that I have background knowledge? Then when I get to kindergarten, did you assess where I am to see what skills I need to strengthen? Did you look at taking my experience that I bring, my cultural background, my language? Did you take all of that in consideration and use it to benefit and to push me forward, or did you see it as a barrier? So what did you do to get me here? Because I didn't get myself here. I don't get myself up in the morning. I don't iron my clothes. I don't wash my clothes. I don't get the get the food from the store and prepare the food. So when we fail together. Because when we succeed together, but I don't really know you if you fail. So we have to take accountability when children fail. They don't fail on their own. We've got to look at that ecosystem to see how we as adults failed them. And in order for them to reach their true potential, their full potential, we have to understand the child. We have to accept everything about them, where they come from, their family dynamic, where they live, their language, and we use it and we capitalize on it. We make sure that they feel valued, that they feel respected, that they deserve an education that is second to none. And children will respect that, right? They can't learn from a person they don't like. And so we've got to create systems and we've got to create schools that instead of children running from them, they're running to them. I can't wait to see Miss So-and-so. Because we have to care. We have to understand, what did you do this weekend? When I was a principal, I stood at the door every morning. Oh, what happened at your birthday party? Did you have your birthday party today? Yes, who was invited? I see you got a new pair of shoes today. Oh, nice haircut today. I see that. You have to know them. You have to know them. I run into teachers all the time, and teachers will say, I go home at the end of the day and leave everything, at the school. When I was a teacher, when I was a principal, I brought them home with me because I got to remember that so-and-so's birthday is coming up, but I know their family dynamic, so I've got to have some cupcakes for them. Well, I got to have a hat. I've got to have something for them so we can celebrate that birthday. We got to understand that certain kids, they're not going to have. So you've got to be their surrogate. You got to be their surrogate adult. And you've got to make sure that you provide for them in order for them to reach their full potential. You've got to believe in them. You've got to believe in them when they can't even believe in themselves. You've got to know that you belong here. I'm not going to let you fail. That's not even an option. You're going to do your best, and I'm going to be here for you because I see it in you. I see potential. I see possibility. And we're going to do this together. We might fall a little bit, but I'll be there to catch you. And that's how we can unlock their potential, understanding who they are, what they bring to the table, what their interests are. And then we can help them move forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of times parents just push away that responsibility, like especially when these kids are younger, like, oh, why are you failing? Why are they trying to hold you back because you don't have these certain skills? But it's like you said, they're not the ones cooking dinner at night, they need that assistance from their parents. So if something's not going right, it's like you said, probably something at home, like they're not having that environment where they are learning, where they are exercising those skills, and then they bring that to school where they aren't exercising those skills and inevitably are going to be held back, like you said.
Mm-hmm. I also think that it's really admirable, like the way that you, as like an educator, think, because I think that it's a very common thing where people like talk about, yeah, these teachers look like they don't want to teach, or like they sound like they don't want to teach. I've encountered some of these teachers, and like obviously we're not going to say names, but like it does make a big difference, because when there's a teacher that cares about you and like your potential and like sees that you can become someone better just by like expanding their education, like it demonstrates in the classroom. Mm-hmm. Like I will name drop a good name, Mr. Barrett, even though I do complain about him a lot. Mm-hmm. He does make learning like a good place. He does make it like we want to learn. Mm-hmm. And like that has helped us so much that we keep coming back to him, and we keep like just spending time with him as a teacher because he has helped us. Mm-hmm. But like it does create like a big difference, because sometimes like my nephew will come home from school and he'll be like, oh, like this teacher, like he doesn't really like her. And like with the language barrier, that was also a really big problem for him, because he was put in a class with like a lot of people who just speak English. Mm-hmm. So like his teacher like didn't have a lot of patience with him, and like we talked to the school about it. But it does make a big difference in the sense of like it like also that essentially teachers hold like your education like at stake. What they show to you is what you're gonna learn. So making it like a better environment for them, and also having like that care, like making it comfortable, makes it a better environment. And I feel like environment in school and out of school are just very important key factors in like the development of learning too.
You said something that was key. Who's in front of our children, right? Who's in front of our children? we have to understand who's in front of our children, because the people who are in front of our children, they bring their worldview into the classroom. They bring their experiences to the classroom. They bring who they are to the classroom. And who they are is going to impact how they interact with you as students and how they interact with your families. And so if they have a distorted worldview about subgroups, then it's going to be reflective in what students learn and how they learn, and how, if they develop a relationship with that individual. And so that's the first thing, understanding who's in front of your children, and understand that we all bring to that classroom who we are. We can't separate it, right? The other thing that you said that was key, was that understanding the environments in which we live. And I had, when I was in high school, I was an athlete, and I was heavily recruited for track and field for Division One. And I remember sitting in my guidance counselor's office, and I put it in the book. And again, I didn't grow up with money or anything. My mom had me at 15, so she had to drop out of school. And so, we were making it. If there was an ace back then, an ace score, back then I was probably 4, which means by society standards, I shouldn't be here. I should be somewhere else, but not here. And so I went from struggling to read to writing a book and to getting a doctorate degree. But that was determination. That was my mom. That was her pushing and determination. So I get into a guidance counselor's office, and she says to me, don't really ask me what my dreams are or anything about me. She just says, I think you type really well. I think you need to go to business school and not go to the school that you want to go to, because that's kind of like a waste of money. That can be reserved for someone more deserving, but you can be in office, you can type really well. And I took that to school with me, and because it hurt, right? It really bothered me, that you thought so low of me, that you put me in a box, that because you know my circumstances, that I can't rise beyond them, that I'm right here in this box. And so that bothered me, and so I took it, and I could have taken it negatively and just kind of wallowed in it and not produced, but I took it and I used it. And every time I felt myself going low, every time I felt myself struggling, I listened and I replayed what she said in my head, because now I have something to prove to you, not only to myself, but I have something to prove to you. And so we have to understand the people who are in the ears of our children, of our students, because words matter. And if you don't use them to build up, then you tear down, and you're not unlocking the potential that our students have. Got to see our students for who they can be, and not their circumstances that they find themselves in. So.
And it's like you said, words matter. If there's a kid who maybe is not having a good, environment at home, and they come into a school where the teacher doesn't want to be here, they don't want to teach, they don't care about the kid's well-being, it makes it even harder for the kid to want to learn, to grasp what the teacher is saying. And it's like my sister said, we have encountered, and it's also very obvious whether the teacher likes and is passionate about what they're teaching, or whether the teacher's, just here because they have to be. So it's like, coming from an environment that's not so good to another environment that's going to not be so good, you're also not going to want to be here, and it's just this endless cycle.
It's an endless cycle. That's why we have to create education. The halls of a school building is not just giving you the academics, it's preparing you for life. And so we need to take those life lessons, and we need to hold on to our students. We need to make sure that we're building relationships. You can't there's a saying that you can't get to Bloom's without getting to Maslow, right? And I know that's like, okay, what is she talking about? Meaning you can't really get to a child academically until you meet their basic needs. right? You meet their basic needs. You form relationships with them. You build relationships with them. And once you build a relationship and they know that you care, even if you get in trouble and even if they yell at you and, get on you, it doesn't matter because you know it's coming from a place of care, that this person cares for me. And because they care for me, I let that person down. I can't let that person down. I got to do what I need to do because that person cares. You said something else about language, right? That your nephew was in an environment where he was the only one that spoke English.
Yeah.
I mean Spanish, right?
Portuguese.
Or Portuguese, right? So there's a myth out there that we're supposed to teach language, a second language, when they get older. But remember what I told you about the brain and the windows of opportunity? Language, we're all born with the capability of speaking any language, right? It's just when we're born, the language that we hear the most is the language that's going to stick. Because there's a critical period between 0 and 3 for language to develop, because language, you can pick up language, you don't have to teach it from that period and that critical time. It's best that we teach language, second language, at that time and not wait. The older we get, the harder it gets because we're outside of the window of opportunity. But if you learn a language within the language window, a child can learn multiple languages at the same time. And we think that it's because we're thinking with our adult brain, we're thinking, oh, that's too hard, that's too difficult. It'll take them a little bit longer, but they can learn. The brain was designed to do that. It can learn both languages at the same time. The problem is that we don't appreciate that and we don't respect that. And so we tend to say English only. Yes, we know that they have to learn English, but we don't want them to learn English at the expense of their home language. Got to learn both, and they can learn both. The brain was designed to do that.
Yeah, and it's all about picking up, like, our first language was Portuguese as well, and that was our dominant language, especially when we were younger. But because we were in programs like GLC and just spending so much time in environments that spoke only English, that was something that we picked up quickly because we were so young. Mm-hmm. So it's like you said, the brain does catch up on that. Mm-hmm. And it's that thing of like, oh, to the expense of another. Like at home, we were still continuously only speaking Portuguese because, like you said, it's not something that necessarily has to be taught. It's something you're going to catch up to. So it's like we were practicing the Portuguese at home and continuing with that dominant language, but learning that in school, English. So it's like at home, my nephew doesn't have to go at home and speak, oh, we need to practice your English, because he's already going to get that from the outside environment that he's in. So yeah.
Great point, and that's exactly what we want to happen.
In your book, you talk about unlocking a student's potential. What do you think is the biggest barrier to a student reaching their full potential in reading?
So we talked about that a little bit, but I think it's like I said earlier, it's the adults. It's the adults that are around them. It's the adults making sure that they have an environment that's conducive for learning and growing. So at that age, they can't do it themselves. It's got to be the adults.
And finally, what message do you hope high school students take away from your book when it comes to their role in helping younger generations succeed academically?
I hope they understand how powerful they are in developing younger students and want to become mentors, want to become a friend and buddy up with someone who's younger and just needs a hand holding, right? I hope they understand that they are powerful, that they don't need to be a teacher to teach reading. So if they just act as conduits, right, and act in a way that will build vocabulary and language, that you're doing your part. You're doing your part. We're not asking you to sit here and have a reading lesson. We're asking you to pick up a book, talk about the cover of the book, the back of the book, the spine of what do you think this book is about. Don't even pepper them with questions after you read a story. Kick it with them, just like you would do a movie. When you watch a movie, you're like, oh, girl, did you see that so-and-so? I didn't like the part. What was your favorite part? Have that engagement with a student after a book. It will do wonders. talking about different things that's happening in the world to build their language skills. That's what preparing the foundations of reading is about. Just learning that reading is just not about letter names and letter sounds. It's about the whole thing, building background knowledge. And you can do that. You can do that just by being yourself and just exposing them to the world, just exposing them to, they don't know. They've only been on this earth, some of them 4 or 5 years, so they got a lot to learn. And you can help them, bridge that gap.
Dr. Bobien-Blanton, thank you so much again for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a pleasure.
Likewise. As we wrap up today's conversation, we want to leave you with a reminder that rings especially true in the world of leadership. In the words of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, speak your mind even if your voice shakes.
So whether you're navigating leadership, facing obstacles, or just speaking out for change, remember to keep pushing forward and making your voice heard.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and share this conversation with others.
You can also follow us on Instagram, Social J Podcast, for more updates and inspiring stories. We'll be back with another episode soon. Stay tuned.